Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking this time out of your day to join us here. It's truly a privilege and an honor, massive, humble, great opportunity to be here with great leaders, young leaders, to speak about issues of leadership, having a leadership workshop. I think in some ways there aren't enough leadership workshops that are basically training us on what does it mean, what does it take to be a good leader, what makes a good leader, what are the traits and characteristics that one needs to embody to be a good leader. So I think we can start with some brief introductions. My name is Kamvelihle Matikizela. I'm a student at the University of Johannesburg doing my final year, studying a bachelor's in politics and economics. I'm currently serving in terms of my line of leadership as the president for the Golden Key UJ chapter this year. And it's really a humble and great honor and privilege to be with you today. Over to you, Christopher.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well today. I'm super excited to be part of this event. I just want to give a massive thanks to Golden Key Mafikeng for bringing this up, or putting this together, rather. So as I said, my name is Christopher Tobayawa. I'm a Rhodes student, final year doing law. I have a vast, amount of leadership experience. I don't want to belabor this entire presentation by going through it, but just for the major highlights, I've served as society chair at Rhodes University for 3 societies, from Zimbabwean Society to vice president of Law Society of Rhodes University to Golden Key presidency. I'm also the tutor and graduate assistant for the law faculty at Rhodes, and I'm also part of the Institutional Forum, which is a body of 3 students selected at university level to advise the highest decision making at university, which is the University Council. So yeah, that's it about me. I pass on the baton to the next person in line. Obriel?
Hi everyone. Sorry. I'm one of the panelists. My name is Yanda. I am the president of Rhodes University. And I think we always underestimate leadership and things that go into leadership. So I'd really like to thank Mafikeng Golden Key chapter for putting this together, just to ensure that people know what it takes to be a leader, but people also know that leadership is multifaceted. We're all different, we all have different journeys, but it's always important to have certain characteristics when you're leading youth, the future of the country. So I'm excited to be here, and Obriel, you may take it.
Welcome again. It's so good to see all these lovely faces, all these young leaders. This is day 3 of what has been an amazing session. What we're going to be doing in the next hour 30 is we're going to hear from young leaders that are part of the panel. We're going to hear their stories about their own experiences in leadership. We're also going to hear about what they think about certain issues and certain subjects in leadership. So yeah, please do tell us in the chat box where you're connecting from. And also please use the Q&A section or option if you want to ask any questions to the panelists as well. So I'd like to believe that everyone has introduced themselves. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Brilliant. So if everyone has introduced themselves, I think we will also
not really leadership.
All right. Please go ahead, Mr. Mafoko. Please introduce yourself to our attendees and our panelists.
You'll then forgive me for not adhering to our agreement to say that now we should wear something white. I just realized later yesterday, because I've been busy dealing with the issues of bursaries and so forth, that I don't have any white shirt, any clean white shirt. Nonetheless, colleagues, I am Mafoko Jotsepile, the Northwest University Council of Society, specifically Mafikeng campus. In a nutshell, I don't want to also prolong this introduction because I've led in several structures before. I was the outgone deputy chairperson of education, the deputy secretary of the education faculty. I later on that particular year became the chairperson of that very same faculty. Not to leave that those ones of me being leading in residence and so forth. However, I'm happy to be here, and thank you very much.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love that. I believe Mr. Metsing Selema, you haven't introduced yourself as well.
Yes, thank you very much, Obiel. Good morning, everyone, to our panelists and our viewers. My name is Metsing Selema. I'm the Legal Affairs Officer of the NWU University Mafikeng Campus Student Campus Council. And currently, I'm also acting as the chairperson of the same structure. I also I belong in this role of leadership. Luckily, I've been in corporate, and I've recently decided to come and get my LLB degree full-time, and I've been graced with the ability to now lead our young people, the students. So yes, I'm very excited to be part of this panel, and I look forward to engaging with all of you guys. Thank you very much.
Awesome, awesome. I think it's important that we have our panel, not only with people that have only been in academia space, but also we've also been in different other spaces, like Mr. Selema just indicated. He's also been in a corporate space before. So it would be really nice also to hear about how leadership is in that space. If you did not join us for day 1 and day 2, don't worry about it. You can tune in on the Golden Key Southern African YouTube account. You can get all the sessions, all the guest speakers, you can get them there. If you're a Golden Key member, you can also get all this footage on the Golden Key Academy. It's going to be archived there. So don't worry if you missed day 1 and day 2, you can still catch up. So on to today's business. We have, of course, to start off with, how do we define true leadership? How do we define true leadership? Over the past 2 days, we've heard that definition, or we've heard that phrase, true leadership, being defined by different industry experts and different subject experts. So now, from a student perspective, how do we define true leadership? Or what is true leadership at its core? I'll start with you, Kamvelishe.
Thank you so much, my brother. I think it's a very, very important question, because with leaders, we need to have these tools at our arsenal. We need to have these assets that we have, such that when we step into leadership, we're able to be effective leaders. I think leadership is very simply an art. It is the art of turning a vision into reality. Remember, as a leader, the very basis, you cannot separate leadership with vision. You cannot be a leader that doesn't have a goal of where you are taking whatever organization that you are leading, or whichever group of people that you're leading. Leadership needs to have an element of vision. You need to see where are you going and how are you going to take this organization or these people, or whichever capacity of leadership that you're in, how are you going to get them there? Because it's one thing to have a vision, but it's another thing to implement it as well. So the first and underlying fact of a leader, to define it, it is the art of turning a vision into reality. And then the second thing going forward to that is, how do I make this vision a reality? What are the practical steps that I engage in and initiate with? How do I empower people? How do I utilize services to get and achieve the goal that we've initially set out to achieve? So that, in very, very simple terms, is what I would define as leadership. And I believe if we can really delve into the depth of this definition and we can really understand it, we can unlock a lot of potential within the line of effective leadership and having leaders that are impactful in their line of work. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think you highlighted something that even Mr. Selema, in one of the videos when we're advertising this workshop, Mr. Selema did mention that true leadership needs to have a vision, and that is important. I'm just going to quickly also ask Zianda to contribute on the definition as well, on trying to define, on trying to understand what does really true leadership entail, or what do we mean by true leadership. Over to you, Zianda.
Thank you. So for me personally, you need to want to serve the people that you're leading. And by serving them, you need to want to serve and also take up space. For you to have a vision and a goal for the people that you're serving, you need to know you need to have an idea of what is best for them and how best can I achieve the goals I have with them in mind. So it's not about self, but it's about self in relation to others, knowing that your actions, your decisions will affect the people that you are representing and that you are leading. So a true leader for me needs to be able to take up space in that way, that if I am representing Golden Key, I need to emulate excellence. I need to emulate community service and all the pillars of Golden Key and know what I am getting myself into. And that is having the passionate of serving. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Zianda. I think you highlighted also something really important about having the people you're serving or you're leading at the center or at the core of what you're doing. I think even with companies and organizations right now, you hear them saying in their brand promise that we have customers at the center of what we do, even being innovative, product development. They always say we have customers at the core of what we're doing. So as I talk about the corporate, maybe just our last contribution in terms of defining what true leadership is, also with a perspective maybe from the corporate space. Mr. Selema, do you mind just dropping what you think in terms of what true leadership is at its core?
Thank you very much, Obriel. I just want to touch first on what Kamvelihle and Zianda said. You see, like you said on the video for the promotion that we had, I did mention that, leadership is about having a vision, not specifically the position, because most of the people confuse the position with leadership. But leadership is a character. It's the ability of an individual to lead the people. And Zianda captures it by saying that you must want to lead your people and you must be able to serve. And I can also refer to one quote that says, if you are too big to serve, then you are too small to lead. So in a space whereby leaders come into that framework or the foundations or principles of leadership, you must be in a position to understand the sacrifice that a leader takes. It is about the sacrifice, the sleepless nights, when everybody's relaxed. What are we doing next? Where are we going? How are we getting there? What do we need? Leadership is about bringing together the different talents, the different abilities that people have, that even you as a leader that do not have, but you bring them together for the greater cause of the community or the group that you're leading. So it does not matter if you're leading from the back, from the side, or in the middle or from the front. You must be able to rotate and suit each position at the time where it's necessary and it's needed. So I think if we put it to that, the issue of having the vision and also having the direction that we're going this way, then we are capturing it quite well. I think, yes, I think that's where I will hold for now, Mr. Maposa.
Thank you so much. I want to drop some of the pointers that we had yesterday in our first, not necessarily yesterday, but from day one, which is the day before yesterday. We had Prof. Mazwe Majola from the World Institute of Leadership, and in his presentation on authentic leadership, this is what he said. He said there's a price to pay of leadership, and I'm bringing this in because I heard you talk about the sleepless nights. He said there's a price of leadership. Number one, loneliness. Number two, sacrifice. And he also mentions too much ambition as well, So, it's important for people to understand what they're signing up for, is it, when it comes to leadership. It's important to understand that there is a price that you have to pay. I'd like to notify our panelists as well as our attendees. Miss Khwadi joined us successfully. So I'll just go to her. She can just quickly introduce herself, and then she can just also tell us what she thinks about the price of leadership, or rather the fact that there is a certain sacrifice that you need to pay as a leader. So over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Maposa. I feel most welcome and appreciate the fact that you excused me when I was going through the internet crisis, but I recovered very well, nicely so. I'm very honored to be part of the panelists. Reason being, I have served so much with all my heart in the Northwest University. You know, I have given it my all ever since I entered at the space in 2016. That was me as a chairperson of the residents. Equally, I was serving as the deputy secretary of the residents. I became nominated as well for Golden Key the first time. I went into my second year, became a chairperson of another residence and also the deputy chairperson of the residence council. At the same time, I was the acting chairperson of the council. Now I moved to my third year. My third year of leadership was mostly based on giving back to the students, where I was doing supplemental instruction facilitation, and also I was a peer mentor. That took me having to guide and also make sure that the students who needed me had me when they did, because you understand that some structures like psychology and other departments are not always there, or they can never cater for all students of the Northwest University at Mafikeng campus. So people like us, outside leadership positions at that time, had to avail ourselves, and I did give myself over to the students. And later on, I became first female secretary general of this Student Campus Council, and then also the Art and Culture and International Officer of the SRC. I also stood in the board of education faculty to represent the students there. So in all my leadership years, I could sum it up as something that revolves around my calling. It is my highest calling in life because I do it with my heart more than I do it for material benefits. I've always worn a blazer from first year. It didn't scare me at my final year. I've always had all these things that people usually go to leadership for, and that is wrong. And that's the type of leadership we are trying to take away from people and redefine it to them, so that they know that leadership is about giving of yourself completely without any expectation. And in that kind of leadership, you must never be expectant of anything. People will never come and thank you for having served them. People will never say, thank you that you made me sleep in your room when I had nowhere to go. People will not come and say, thank you for sacrificing that you never even had a bursary, but you made sure that I got my bursary. You went and even fought for my allowances. Therefore, the kind of leadership I define is that one basically where you lead with your heart more than you do with your mind or anything else. That is where you put yourself in the front line for the people that you are serving more than you do for your own merit or status at that time. If you are really put in that position for you to serve, your status will show from your actions. You'll be glorified naturally, you know, you'll be uplifted without trying hard. And that's how it has always been for me. And I'll never forget or even leave behind the fact that I am for female emancipation. At the end of the day, females in society at large are not recognized to a certain degree. They are still suppressed to a certain extent, especially in the education sphere, political and economic sectors. Therefore, I am here to make sure that at some point in my life, also as an aspiring young businesswoman, I make space for such females to exist. I make space so that they can also come through without a hassle, without trying too hard. That is why I even went and sacrificed everything that I had, whatever that had to come with it that is negative. And I said, I'm running to be the first female president of this campus. And even though the position was never obtained, the move, the status quo was shook. The ground was really trembling at that time. And I knew that I had really achieved my goal in this. And I will continue to inspire young women, make sure that in as much as they look up to me, I live their life that says, this is a woman that young women look up to in leadership and even outside the university sphere. And that is how it is, Mr. Maposa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Boipelo. I think you've driven me now to bring up something I had later on in the session on the agenda, but it's okay. That's why we have you here. That's why we love to have you in this engagement.
You know, yes,
when we spoke leadership as well with Maya. Maya is from the African Leadership Academy. On day one in session 2, she mentioned something. She said there is willing versus reluctant leadership. She proposed that there are two types of leaders. We've got willing versus reluctant type of leaders. And when she mentioned that, the first thing I thought of was actually student leadership. And the reason why I thought of student leadership is because, we sort of like blow hot air and cold air, in most cases as young leaders. We act as if we are willing to serve, and then sometimes we're just reluctant there, And it brings me to, what are the key characteristics of authentic leadership? So I want to propose this to Mr. Mafoko. Let's hear what you think on what are the key characteristics we can say make up authentic leadership or brings about authentic leadership. Over to you, Mr. Mafoko.
Thank you very much, leadership. You'll forgive me. These things of blazers are irritating me nonetheless. One thing that I would say, I believe leadership, you cannot specify and say, like for the likes of Ms. Bose, who does it from wholeheartedly, the likes of Meting, who's my colleague, I believe, I know he also leads with, in fact, I usually say he leads during the night, because in most cases, we don't even sleep. Most of our incidents, we deal them during the night. I believe a few of the latter speakers clearly stated that leadership it's action, not a position, and leadership is all about a vision. You see, those characteristics are the most important one in leadership, because one, you cannot lead masses or rather group of people without a vision. And then again, if ever you don't have an action plan put in place, simply means you are going to mislead them. There's a leader who once said that a leader is the one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. In a way, you have to be an example. You have to be an inspiration to those that you lead. The characteristics that you only need, it's you being consistent. It's you knowing when to take left or when to take right. Leadership, it's really tricky, and then most people, hence some say that you can be, anyone can be a leader, of which I also agree with that statement, because somehow leadership will then only revolve around what you believe in. So if ever you believe in something and then you do it, like Ms. Bosi believes in empowering women, and she does it successfully over the years. Before you even know that there's Ms. Bosi, you'll then realize that a lot of students or a lot of people that you come across, they look up to her, because she does that thing with an open mind, wholeheartedly. So you'll realize that you cannot lead if ever you don't have a vision, or you don't have a purpose as to why you actually want to lead. So in my two sentiments, action and vision, those are the two most important characteristics.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna come to you, Christopher. When Prof. Mazwe in his presentation on authentic leadership, when he was defining what authentic leaders look like, he spoke of competence, he spoke of being ethical, he spoke of being accessible, he spoke of being accountable, and then they lead themselves very well. He said authentic leaders lead themselves very well. And that is something that was mentioned across so many presentations. We had so many speakers saying anything around leadership starts with self. It starts with self. So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, Obriel, that's a really good question, because I think you already know me and how I'm all about the importance of self-mastery in trying to execute true and authentic leadership. But here's the thing about self-mastery. Think about it this way. The hardest battle that you have to fight, especially regarding leadership, starts with your own mind and your own personal restraints. That very little thought behind your head that, oh man, this is going to be a very difficult year. This is going to be this is going to be that. And you being able to first tame that beast of adversity that happens within self is the first point of leadership. That's the first point of departure. Secondly, discipline. We downplay the role of discipline in managing to actually bring leadership to the forefront, because I mean, of late, or rather as the years have gone by, we've seen that there are some leaders who are extremely good at their job. You know what I mean? They're good as a president, they do this and this, but then there are certain aspects of their life that they perhaps don't have under control. What usually happens is sometimes some of those things end up trickling into how they execute their duties. And sometimes it kind of damages the perception that the public has, especially towards that person. And I've said this over and over again. One of the most important aspects that you can have as a leader is to have the confidence of people. And that's one thing that is difficult to gain back once lost. That confidence can only be gained once you show that you are, number one, a worthy role model. Number two, someone who can walk the talk and talk the walk. You know, number three, you have to show that you are completely in control of your impulses, as well as things such as your schedule, for example. And I emphasize things, and I think you've come across this, things such as waking up early, keeping healthy habits, reading up a little bit more. I won't belabor the presentation with some of these little tips, but I feel like being able to invest in yourself to ensure that you are the absolute best version of yourself at any given time is the best investment that you can make in actually being an exceptional leader. Now, when you talk about the mastering of the self, there are certain characteristics that you have to possess. Things such as resilience, for example. Sometimes things are going to be extremely difficult. You're going to reach a point where you feel like you can't continue anymore. And at that point, it's okay to feel vulnerable. But the vulnerability can't then be kind of like shared among the people that you lead, because sometimes you really need to be that person who reassures the rest of the public that you are leading, whether you're going through something or not, or whether you're absolutely handling it in the best way possible. The thing that people want to see from a leader is results. So sometimes it means that, and I'll go back to that point of sacrifices, that sometimes you need to sacrifice some of the luxuries that people have, especially in terms of going through it. And being able to express that they're going through it. Sometimes you need to just, roll with the punches and be able to soldier on. So resilience is one of those things that you have to master, especially when you master the self. Another thing is clear vision and knowing your resources. I think as a leader, sometimes you're supposed to know your own personal bounds, the things that you can do, and most importantly, those that you can't do. And by knowing the things that you can't do, you need to know exactly where you can get some of that support. So for example, we always talk about delegation, but we don't take it that seriously. The problem that I used to have as a leader, and I'm speaking this from a personal point of view, which is what the session is essentially about, I guess, but like, I used to want to be able to do everything, if it comes to, as a society chair, for example, if you wanted to send a communication to the rest of the group or to the rest of the students, I wanted it to be written a certain way. I wanted it to be written in my words. I wanted it to be written how I would like to see it. When it comes to editing a video for a particular presentation, I wanted this particular format, this particular song. And so what that did was it made me focus basically on the micros of leadership instead of the macros, because when you're a leader, sometimes as much as you should be among the people and lead within the trenches, sometimes you must also be able to get an area of view, to establish your broader vision for whatever group you're leading. And that means that sometimes you need to step away and be able to let someone else do it. And I mean, just speaking from another characteristic of leadership, being able to empower the people that you're leading with. Every leader has a team. Being able to pour into them to ensure that people can do things up to the standard that you expect. You also need to pour into them and to also acknowledge that some people are better at you than at certain things, and you must let them flourish and you shouldn't suppress them. So all of those characteristics come from being able to monitor some of the personal traits that you have, making sure that you're a very secure person. You don't get intimidated by someone who's clearly doing extremely well in their leadership role. Being able to ensure that you're able to manage impulses. Sometimes you can get mad over something. Someone can say something that is extremely offensive. And sometimes it takes being able to say, okay, you know what, you shouldn't take anything personally. You're a leader at the end of the day. You're not going to be liked by everyone. And I'll revert and close by saying this particular quote that I read somewhere, probably on Twitter. It basically stated that if you want to be liked by everyone, as a leader, you're probably in the wrong place. If you want to be liked by everyone, you should be selling ice cream. And I 100% agree with that, because the only person who can evoke a universal amount of happiness is someone who sells ice cream and pitches up to a place. As a leader, sometimes people are going to frown when you arrive, and you should be able to control yourself and be able to handle those impulses that come within you whenever you see a negative response. Because sometimes some people won't like you because you're doing your job, and it's okay. And you need to be able to handle those impulses and be able to soldier on regardless of the negativity that comes your way. So with that said, I think that's it from my side.
All right, thank you so much, Christopher. I don't know about selling ice cream, but I think it's something we can look in the summer. But what an important contribution you just made there, you know. And you spoke about vulnerability, and I noted it down because it's something that I also had on my end that I want to pose to the panel. And I'm going to quickly go to you, Zianda. How important is being vulnerable in a team? Because vulnerability was also a word that was thrown around by a lot of guest speakers from day one and day two. You know, the importance of vulnerability between a teams in team building, you know. So how important is expressing your vulnerability to your team members? You know, how vital is it? Zianda, what do you think about vulnerability in authentic leadership?
So vulnerability ties very close with empathy. And for you to be a leader, you need to be able to put yourself in your team, your members' shoes, and to put yourself in the people you're serving shoes. You need to realize that besides your position, you're human. And it's, like I said, it's self in relation to others. How you relate to others, how others relate to you. Vulnerability is a key component in engaging with people, because as much as people might not like you, people might like you, but there's always that human element. And I like how Boipelo mentions that, you know, her leadership is very fueled by her goal, her dream, her passion, what she was born to do. And that is being vulnerable, knowing that your vulnerability plays a huge role in also serving people, because for you to be driven enough to serve, you need to be vulnerable to yourself and to the people that you're leading with, so that they know that we're in capable hands and we're with someone that knows the implications of dealing with human beings, dealing with people, and being in the front line of a lot of things. Things like if you don't have a bursary, but as a leader, you have to step in for people that have a bursary. Being vulnerable enough to acknowledge that, but also being empathetic enough to still fight for that, and knowing that it's not only about me, but me, what I do matters, and what I say, how I act with the people that I interact with also matters, and how they see me, especially the people I'm working with, matters. So I think vulnerability is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to ask as well Boipelo to comment on vulnerability. And I just want to say this, you know, I think, you know, when we make ourselves vulnerable, I think we then allow people to compliment us where we're not strong enough, if I can use that phrase. You know, we allow people then to compliment us, you know, in areas that we lack. So so yeah, let's just hear what you think as well on vulnerability, Boipelo.
Thank you, Maposa. Yeah. Well, vulnerability sometimes, to a certain extent, is what actually makes a leader, because vulnerability goes with you being a moral and principled type of leader. It takes you away from yourself. And what I mean by this is, and this is what Zianda said when she said vulnerability drives to service. I mean, for you to be able to serve people in the way that you're going to serve them, especially a university mass like we have been doing, takes you to having to lose certain things or elements of yourself. You know what? I won't go to debate and go talk to students there. I won't walk on concrete instead of tar that I'm used to. You lose yourself. And it all starts with when you start campaigning, going to students, searching their situations, I've seen myself in situations I've never imagined myself. And that showed the totality and art of vulnerability, that you must put yourself in the shoes of people that you are representing, people that you say you understand their problems, in order for you to serve them to the greatest and highest degree. And for you to know when students say they struggle to come to classes early because they stay fine, they walk in winter, it's really bad. You've been walking through that route to come to campus, you know it. You've exposed yourself to that vulnerability. That's what it means. If students are saying they don't have food, they're only surviving on bread every day, you must be with those students and see them and see how it's rough. So with myself personally, vulnerability comes from a point of letting yourself go, letting what you know go, letting who you are go. Not that you are forgetting yourself or you are letting your guard down, but you are allowing yourself to step in other people's shoes, to step in other people's conditions. In that way, you lead better because you know what you're talking about, even when you go, because the whole point of being a leader is to represent a group of certain people, individuals that are looking up to you to speak on their behalf because they can't speak. So for you to be able to say to the financial department or head or aide and say, you know what, there's a student here, man, she comes from a very poor family, she needs allowance, she needs 1, 2, 3, you know, for you to say that, you must know and feel it, or why she needs it. You've seen her room, or she doesn't have food, she doesn't have clothes, it's really rough. So that's where vulnerability boils down to, coming from a point of leadership, or coming from a point of being different from the people that you are leading. You must bring yourself to a point. I always say the reason why I've also been loved as a leader is because of my rare characteristic to bring myself down to the level of the people that I'm serving. I'm always seen with people that are always classified as beyond my class or outside my class or below my class. And I'm like, it's those kind of people that show what I am here for or what I am here to do. It's those kind of people that drive me when I serve, because I do it eventually for them. I don't do it for the well-off. I don't do it for the people on my class or status. I do it for these people that are actually regarded as not on my class or that need me most. And that's really what vulnerability leadership is. Thank you, Maposa.
Thank you, Ms. Bossi, Boipelo Fadi there. I'm going to come to Mr. Mafikeng, because when Chris was speaking, he mentioned delegating. He mentioned, you know, at times leaders want to do everything in one go. Mr. Mafikeng is currently in a team setup, the SCC of the NWU Mafikeng campus. And all of us are also in team setup right now, but I just want to go to him and find out, you know, how do you go on about delegation? What's the best way of growing into, you know, delegation? Because again, with delegation, I think sometimes
please come again. I just lost you there.
Okay, I'm talking about delegation. When Christopher was speaking, he mentioned delegation, the importance of delegating things, not wanting to run with everything as a leader. Maybe you're leading a project or you're leading a team, and as we read out your bio, you've been in the corporate space as well. You've worked with teams. So how do you best go on about delegating, or how do you also develop your delegating skills as well as a leader? How do you go on about that?
There's some construction work happening here. Okay, so as a leader, number one, you need to be able, one of the speakers, I think it was Mr. Christopher, he spoke about identifying your resources. Leader, in group dynamics, your major resource is your human resource. It's the people that you're leading, it's the people that you are with. So by having that, that's number one. You need to identify your key resources within that group of people. You must be able to identify that these are people who share the same aspirations, same character traits as myself. And they have these particular strong points and they have these weaknesses, but this is how I can use their strong points. Once you have established that, now we're able to cascade down the pressures at the level of leadership. And like also Christopher said, having an aerial view, you're able to say, I can identify Zianda or Wipelo or Kanvelishe to be strong on this particular aspect. And And for that reason, I do not have to concentrate my energy on these particular aspects when I can actually also grow other leaders within the same group by giving this particular responsibilities to these individuals. So you delegate these duties, you delegate this on the basis of, firstly, you're developing leaders, but you have identified that there is a willingness, there's willingness in them that they want to grow, they want to also be leaders. And a leader must be able to pass on to other leaders. So you delegate because, or rather because you are able to identify the ability of other leaders that, or other followers who can be converted into leaders. We usually say here that we are leading with leaders. And when we say we're leading with leaders, we mean that the people we lead are not retards, are not slow, are not stupid, are not anything else. We all as leaders have been given the grace of leading. Tomorrow it will be someone else. So we need to understand that the people we lead have the same ability to lead. And what we do as individuals or as leaders, it is to empower them. And this is where delegation comes in. You empower your people by delegating duties to them, by identifying that they have these particular characteristics that need to be developed. And that's how they grow. And you see, I wanted to touch on a bit of the issue of vulnerability. This also assists in terms of your vulnerability, because you have a cycle of people you lead, but there's also an inner cycle, and an inner cycle works like your think board, where you bounce off ideas and you're trying to hear and understand what the other people are saying, how other people see things. This shapes your thinking. This tests your decision making. It tests your view as well. So when you do this delegation, or when you're also in a space of vulnerability, the council around you, that the inner circle around the people you are leading, becomes an area whereby you test your ideas. So the issue of delegation comes in that sense of saying that, look, I need to grow people, I need to develop leaders, and there are traits that I can really use, I can really make do of. And as a Christian, I can just coach to the times when Moses he could not lead the entire Israel. He needed to bring in place leaders from the 12 tribes. And the same happens even in our recent and our current times. That is why you have levels of leadership from your board to the management executive, then to your line managers and to supervisors and the likes. This is the same idea of delegation, but only on a corporate scale of saying that these are your responsibilities. Once you delegate properly, you will see that you now focus on more strategic issues and strategic aspects. When your people you've delegated deal on a day-to-day nitty-gritties, bread and butter issues, as Ms. Bosi is saying, that you need to understand and be able to lead the people on their point of need. So I think if from that element of understanding that this delegation also grows and develops more leaders, and if you lead with leaders, then the burden on yourself becomes lighter. Thank you, Abraham. Maposa?
Gabriel, you're muted. Just unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Sorry about that. I was saying, Carice Anderson in a presentation yesterday. Thank you so much, Metzing, for that valuable contribution. Carice Anderson in a presentation yesterday, she mentioned the importance of trust in leadership. And she mentioned 3 components of trust. She mentions, number 1, logic. And under logic, she says, are you competent? Number 2, authentic. Are you real? Number 3, empathy. Do you care about me, or do you care about the people? So what do you think on trust, on how to build trust, on how can you build trust? Because I think it's fair for me to say across the African continent, maybe in the Southern African region, and also even in our universities with our different leadership structures, at some point we felt that we don't trust our leaders enough to make the changes that we want them to make. So I just want to hear your comments, Felicia, on the importance of trust as one of the key elements of true leadership or authentic leadership.
Thank you very much, sir. And a very important part that you're mentioning there, because I do think that in some ways, trust is an element that is missing in a lot of spheres of leadership in today's time. So one thing I'd like to highlight is that leadership, I think we need to say that it is an ever-evolving journey of development. You know, as a leader, you are constantly on a path of ensuring that you better yourself. And that's why I like the topic of vulnerability that we're touching on now, because vulnerability assists you with recognizing your weaknesses. You know, there's a misconception that being vulnerable is a weakness, but it's actually a strength, because you're able to see where you're not good, and that's how you're able to develop yourself, you know. So going into trust is a concept that is earned. It's similar to respect. You know, trust is earned. And how do you earn trust? You earn trust by conducting yourself in an appropriate way according to the characteristics of leadership consistently over a long period of time. Remember, I think many people, we don't understand the fact that we are kind of emulating some form of brand. You are kind of emulating some form of image, even in the things that you do, the way you talk, the way you present yourself to people, the ideologies you abide by, the principles you are built on, your character, your personality, all those things are creating a specific image and brand for yourself. And I think in modern times, leaders are not very conscious of the brand they are creating. They're not very conscious of the image that they are carrying across to people in a public sphere, you know, because people are able to rationalize, you know, we're able to critique, we're able to see that, no, in A, B, C, D, this leader is lacking in such a way. And as a result, I'm losing trust in that person, you know. So trust is earned. So leaders, modern day leaders, even young leaders, there's an element of the brand that we are creating. And I don't think we are aware enough of the kind of image and perception that we carry across to our public and our societies. That's why keeping yourself accountable is very important. I think accountability is something that is missing very much in modern day leadership. You know, we do things without thinking about the repercussions of that. We do things without thinking twice about how is this going to affect the next person. You know, as a leader, I think it ties back to empathy when we're saying that as a leader, first and foremost, your responsibility is to serve people. So every action that you have, you need to go back to ask yourself, how are the people being affected by this? If I'm doing A, B, C, D, what is the impact, not just for me, but actually the society that I'm leading? So this is how trust is earned. It ties in line with legitimacy. Legitimacy is known as the right to lead. You know, it ties in with authentic leadership. It ties in with someone that emulates credible and authentic traits of what leadership is all about. So I think in modern day times, this is an area in which we are not taking too seriously. And there's a conception that this person is going to come into leadership and all they're going to do is just serve themselves. They're going to engage in corruption and all these things. It's because that trust has been lost, you know, because people monitor your actions. You're creating an image and a brand for yourself. Now, the problem with trust is that once trust is lost, trust is very difficult to regain. Even outside of the context of leadership, if you think about your friends or your own relationships, when someone has done something that you don't agree with or has engaged in an act of betrayal in some form, it's difficult to regain that trust. I know someone used the analogy of an eraser. You know, when you take an eraser and every mistake that you continue making, and you keep on erasing the trust, the eraser becomes smaller and smaller. And it's kind of the same thing with trust, you know. So we need to work hard to ensure that we actually don't get to that stage in the first place of losing trust, because trust is very difficult to regain, right? But I think one of the things and one of the massive challenges that even upcoming leaders will have, even in the future, in the current youth, because the current youth will inevitably be the next generation of presidents, of leaders, of entrepreneurs, of philanthropists. I think the next challenge that the current youth has is, how do we redefine leadership? How do we redefine trust? How do we redefine legitimacy in leadership? Because in many ways, there is a conception that leaders have a self-serving interest, kind of like stomach leadership. What can I gain? What can I benefit? So one of the challenges that we'd have even in the current youth is to redefine that narrative and to redefine that perspective. But trust begins with ourselves, our image. What image are we emulating? What brand are we creating of what leadership is all about? And that's some of the challenges that I think we don't take seriously enough in modern day leadership. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Kamvelishe. I'm going to quickly go to Mr. Mafoko and Metsing, but I'll start off with Mr. Mafoko. Before I let them go, they're supposed to go into another engagement in about 10 to 15 minutes time. So I just want them to just sum up on what are some of the things that young leaders or people that want to go into the leadership space, particularly students, particularly young adults, what should they guard against? I'll start with you, Mr. Mafoko.
Thank you very much, leadership. I only, if you remember, I believe the other time when we were making introductions, I don't know, was it on Sunday or Saturday? Yeah, I think on Sunday. I always said most of our young leaders or young people, when they aspire to be in leadership, they forget one thing. They forget the constituency of which they lead. They tend to please other leaders than having to please those that they lead, of which it's something that happens on a daily basis. We have people that, for example, you'll find in organizations, you'll have people who are senior, they call them senior comrades, of which are senior comrades or senior leaders, let me put it like that, in the respective of us having to engage about leaders. We will find that we have those people. Now, those people will find themselves having to channel how we should think, what they should do, even when they are in office. You see, you'll find that, for example, I am deployed by a certain organization. Then those people, they will want to micromanage us in every possible way. So young leaders fail to understand that in as much as you have to give it back to the organization or whatever to other leaders, but you should not neglect those that believed in you. Because, for example, it can be you, me, Obrel, even your society, Golden Key alone, the committee. They cannot take you, maybe, for example, to a higher position. They can only maintain you where you are. But for a higher position, you are going to need them, and you are going to need the constituents at large that you lead. So I think most leaders must guard against having to please other leaders than to please students. I always live by this quote: in order for you to have something you never had, you have to do something you never did. They must specifically find a purpose in what they want to do, and they must not find themselves having to lead in a wrong way, thinking that they are doing right things just to please a certain group. You understand? So that's my 2 sentiments. I believe they should guard against having to please other leaders, because, mind you, other leaders have ulterior motives. They tend to forget about students. They've been on the ground for far too long that they even forget the purpose of them being leaders. Now they are going to brainwash those that want to come into the field of leading. So in closure, I believe that we should find ourselves having to lead those that we believe in us, rather than lead for those that want to manage us, in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mafoko, and thank you so much for making a contribution to this. I'll head over quickly to Mr. Selema.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Each and every one of us have the responsibility to equip ourselves, whether for being a leader in whichever field, starting in your own life, like Christopher said, in your own life, in your family, where you're going to work, with your friends, or whichever groups that you belong to. So the first thing that we need to do, or I would advise to leaders, aspiring leaders, is for firstly, equip yourselves. Equip yourselves in a sense that understand what your aspirations are. Have a vision for yourself. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? What do you want your ideology to say about you? Have a vision of understanding firstly who you are and what you want for yourself. Once you know where you are going, then it will make your route easier to know what is it that you take and what is it that you don't take. Where do you develop? Where do you grow? What do you feed yourself and what do you starve yourself? Then you will have empowered and nourished yourself as an individual first. And then from there, choose role models in terms of leaders. Look at a leader and say, this is who I want to be like. This is who I want to resemble. This is whom I want to surpass. This is not who I want to be associated with. That way, then you are able to learn their skill, their trade, and seeing how they did things. You read about, or you read whatever that they publish, you read what they read, you feed yourself what they feed themselves, so that you are able to develop your character in accordance to now who you want to look like, or who is your role model. So you start with yourself, you come to your role model, then you identify the people that you're trying to lead. The solution, in fact, leadership is about bringing a solution. So you identify the solution, the problem you're trying to solve, and you are saying, now that I am this person with this vision, having seen these people in the same field I'm trying to address, achieving or going through this, these are the people, or this is the solution I'm trying to attain, and you bring those things together. Then you will be a leader that people can identify. When you are there, people look at your character. They can identify it to something they've seen before, which is positive, and they can say, he is speaking now the type of solution or the type of struggle that we want. So you will not only be a leader that is self-imposing on people, you will be a leader who is identified for the solutions that you're trying to bring. I think there's many other ways, but for now, I think that's what I can say. Identify the type of leader you are and what you want to achieve. And look at the people who've traveled the same road you want to travel, what they've achieved. And identify the solution in the community that you are leading, whether be it in your own family or just in a smaller group. What is the solution that you're trying to be? And take charge of that particular path, and then you'll be fine. Thank you very much, Obrel.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you so much for your contribution, and all the best for the rest of your term. And I think we will need more engagements like this. I think we'll definitely, of course, speak about it at the end of the session on how can we continue investing in conversations and programs to empower young leaders. We had a comment in the comment section from one of the attendees. They say, how do you curb or draw the line towards the notion that leaders in the room must be a replica of the type of leader you are? Kamvilushe, what do you think about that question?
That's a very lovely question, and thank you to Mr. Tolani for posing that question as well. I think one thing we need to do is take a step back and understand that people are different, right? So even on this panel, for example, everyone's got a different personality, right? So as a result, because people are different to one another, it's unrealistic to have the exact same replica of the same leader consistently over and over again, right? So one thing that we need to dismantle is the myth that one leader should be exactly the same as his or her predecessor, right? But with that said, there are fundamental principles that every leader must have. It's non-negotiable. For example, every leader must have an element of legitimacy. Every leader must have an element of consistency. Every leader must have an element of making impact, you know? So there's these non-negotiable principles that every leader must have, but they will go about those things in their different leadership styles because every leader is different personalities. One positive of that as well is that when you've got different types of personalities, it allows for innovation, right? I think it goes back to what I said earlier on, that leadership is an ever-evolving journey of self-development. You know, you never come to a point where you say, I know it all, or I've got all the traits, all the talents. You constantly need to develop yourself. And the reason why that is important is because the demands of society are constantly developing, they're constantly changing, right? So as a leader, if you want to remain relevant, you need to constantly develop yourself. You need to constantly be on a journey of adapting and making sure that you remain relevant, because if you're not relevant, you won't be an effective leader, right? So to Tulani's question, to answer it, just to simplify it once more, There are fundamental principles that every leader must have. It's non-negotiable, right? But it's not realistic or even fair to stipulate that everyone should be an exact replica of each other. You know, in that way, we negate innovation. In that way, we negate creativity. In that way, we prevent new ideas from coming in. You know, we currently live in a time where innovation is being rewarded. Look at the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, how people have been able to adjust, new ways of working, new ways of doing school, new platforms that allow for efficiency and that allow one to continue their day-to-day task on a virtual atmosphere or platform are being rewarded. So innovation is something that we can't kill. And we'd be killing innovation if we put all leaders under the same shoe or under the same umbrella that they need to behave the exact same way as their predecessor. But there are fundamental principles that every leader must have, like vision, like legitimacy, like consistency, like impact and empowerment. So that's how we draw the line. Once a leader doesn't have or emulate those traits, there is a big problem. Thank you for that question, Tulan. I think it was a very, very important one. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Kavalisha, for corresponding to that. I think it's important, you know, when we're trying to look at mentors, because I'm going to bring about the issue of mentoring now, the importance of mentoring and grooming leaders, not to always mimic, you know, someone you look up to, not to always imitate, not to always, you know, trying to be a carbon copy, you know. But it's very important to ensure that, you know, there are ways in which you can improve, because I believe, you know, everyone, in as much as we've got different strengths and weaknesses, you know, we can always learn from each other, but at the same time, we can build on, you know, we can build on. I think you spoke about a predecessor and a successor. I think if you look up to your predecessor, as a successor, you also have, you know, the responsibility of improving on what your predecessor did, you know. So if you're going to be a very, very carbon copy of your predecessor, then it's going to put you in a situation where you're just going to, well, not that sustainability is not a good thing, but then you're just going to sustain the organization on the same level. But I think it's important for us to always look for growth, to improve, you know. So as I indicated, I now want to jump onto mentoring, the importance of mentoring, and how can we best go about mentoring other young leaders. You know, we talk about the panel right now has got chapter presidents. It also has people that have been in the SRCs and SCCs. How do we develop leaders from the grassroots? How do we start about a mentorship program? So I want to go to Zianda and Boipelo, because Boipelo mentioned that she has got young girls that look up to her. So I just want to go, how do we go on about mentoring and ensuring that we are doing it in the right way, having proper mentor-mentee relationships? Yeah, Zianda, you can start off and then we go off to Boipelo.
Thank you. So one thing I always tell people that I'm serving or people that I'm leading is get involved. So you can sit with them every day and encourage them, but you see that with action that they're actually listening to what you're saying. And I always say, get involved. If you are passionate about climate change, get involved in organizations. Boipelo mentioned giving like space for women or creating that platform for women to actually shine. And that's something I'm also very passionate about, allowing women to, you know, rise above the marginalization and everything. So in a situation like Golden Key, where I am the president, that alone shows that you too can do it. And I always encourage women in my residence that just get involved, get into my subcom, get into other subcoms, get into things so that by the time it is your time to either campaign or to, you know, get interviewed or whatever the case may be, you have been involved and you've kind of created this thing for yourself. Because I'm passionate about specifically mentoring women, it's very important to me to make them realize that what you do right now, unfortunately, people will remind you for the rest of your lives. And why I'm saying unfortunately is that if you just pop up during campaign, people be like, oh, we don't know this person. But if you've been, you know, if you've been involved in all of those things, they'll be like, we know this person, let's vote for her. And they won't make it about, oh, she's a woman, do you think that she can lead? So sometimes to kind of combat that, I always say, be in every space. Be like Boipelo, she mentioned a lot of positions that she's in. Do that, be in places. Then unfortunately, some people have to work harder than others. But, you know, one thing that no one can take away from you is volunteering yourself, getting involved, showing that you're able to make yourself vulnerable and you're actually able to present the characteristics of leadership to people, and people can see you for the leader that you are, instead of all the other things that, you know, don't matter, like how you look, the color of your skin, etc., etc. So yeah, basically when I mentor people, I just encourage them to get involved and to reach out when they need help with getting involved, being recognized. So those two for me, I always say that is, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zianda. Boipelo, your thoughts on mentoring as well?
Thank you, Gabriel. Well, with mentoring, for me, like I always say, I think I should have done psychology to a certain extent, because I always believe in touching the heart more than you touch anything before the situation, because what makes a person change when you mentor them is the ability for you to change how they feel about something, how they see something in their heart, how they relate to it, before you can actually go address the specific situation. So with that said, I mean, I believe peer mentoring or mentoring in general to be something that provides individuals who have suffered from a specific past experience or specific event a chance to learn from those who have recovered. You know, so if I have to mentor, say, a group of young women to become great leaders in society, it'll have to be how I have done it, because that takes experience from me. That takes me having to have lived those life moments for me to tell them about them. And whatever that I have taken out of it, because peer mentoring also deals with a lot of knowledge and support and skills transfer to those that you are mentoring. So if I have something that they need to take away from me, it'll have to be the experience that I had, because my individual experiences are what actually drives my mentoring system, because I always take it personal. I always say, because I went through 1, 2, 3, or according to what I have learned as an individual, this is what you can also learn, or this is how you can address the situation. But also we must understand that at most the mentoring won't also come from a personal point of view or a personal experience. That's why I say leadership in conjunction with my craft being poetry have taught me to delve deep in my emotions and to deal with people's situations as if I am in that situation, as if I have experience of the situation, because that's what poetry takes. Sometimes you don't write because you have felt love. You write because you saw somebody being in love and you imagine how it is like to be in love. That's why you can write about love, right? So now taking it to mentoring, sometimes you find a student who comes and they have a rape case and they need you to help them with that situation. You don't know how it is like to be raped. You've never been raped. You've never been exposed to a situation where rape is taking place. But here's a student, they are crying. They need you to help them. How do you deal with such a situation? That's where now you become sympathetic and empathetic about the situation. You feel it to depth, to core, and that's how you be able to assist such a student. That's what mentoring does. And mentoring, from these conversation chats that are on our Zoom session there, I noticed that somebody asked the question whereby how do we take it from how do we actually separate the situation whereby a person is mentoring another and the person that is being mentored becomes exactly a direct replica of the mentor. And I said, it's not about that. Remember, there's a notion that goes, you are who you surround yourself with. You know, you become who you surround yourself with. For instance, you will notice that a lot of people will grasp certain terms and phrases from friends or from certain associates or people they look up to because they are always with them. They will start talking the way these people talk because they are always with them. When they address issues or given a podium, I'm talking about a relationship between a mentor and a mentee, a leader and somebody who is an aspiring leader. The aspiring leader will always speak in a way that the leader they aspire to be speaks like. The mentee will drive drive arguments the same way their mentor drives them. So it's about the surrounding. And that's why as a mentor, you must always put yourself in a situation where you are a great leader. You live your truth. You don't just preach and don't do. And I've always said, to a certain extent, the mentorship as well as leadership takes a certain degree of perfection. It's not that you are not being yourself or you are hiding certain things from society, or you are excluding certain parts of your life, but you need to be in a position to live a perfect life in a sense that people are looking up to you. And by people in my situation, I'm talking about young females. They want to be who I am. They want to walk where I have walked. And if I'm not gonna walk on the path that is right, do I think that I will mentor or groom a group of young women that are walking right? No, that is why it starts with me, how I live my life as a young female leader that is being looked up to. I need to mentor people in a way that I live my life. I don't go out at night because I'm afraid of being raped, or I'm afraid of getting mugged, experiencing crime and all these things. And because they see where I don't go out at night, they will take it easily. They will take such mentoring easily, such type of leadership easily, they will adapt to it easily. If I say to students where I always dress neat and presentable everywhere I go, because whatever fashion sense that I put out there, young women want to grasp it and take it and be exactly that. So it has to be in a way that is classy, that is sophisticated, that represents the brand that I am. I heard somebody talking about a brand, and I think that Gamveli, yes, a brand and image. You sometimes you don't know that there's people looking up to you, or what you create as yourself is what another person will absorb and become. So be that which will be great for another person to absorb. Be that which will be something like an image of perfection for young women to take in with themselves and to be, And I also believe in the art of specialization in this instance. And reason being, also Christopher spoke about it, but he did not mention it the way I'm doing. The art of specialization says, do which that you are good at and leave all other things that you cannot do, or to people that can do them best. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's certain things that I know I'm not good at when it comes to leadership or when it comes to mentoring. And I won't even involve myself in those things because I cannot do them best. I cannot excel. It must be that as a leader, you excel at all things that you do. For instance, I can play sport very well. I can lead nicely. I can write very beautifully. I can talk greatly, but I cannot sing. So if I cannot sing, what am I doing at choirs? What am I doing at events where people are singing, where I'm asked to take out a song and it backfires? So what am I doing in things that are not me? You get the point, Maposa. So with that said, I always say, be great, be you that inspires, be you that is almost close to perfection and the best. And that's what I believe, to sum up in my attempt to conclude, to sum up what I'm saying, because now when you are a perfect figure, the mentees or the people that look up to you will become mentored easily. Sometimes mentoring is all about action, and action means that's also stemming from what Mafoko said earlier, action and vision in leadership. You must be able to set actions that can be easily animated and taken. You must be able to do things that people will come and be like, yo, Maranu leader, right? Or hey, this is the form of leadership that I want to follow into, or that I want to take from you, that I want to learn about, that I want to portray out there because I believe in this type. I've seen you portray this type of leadership. So you act as you mentor people. Sometimes you mentor people without even saying, come here, let me mentor. Mentoring can be one-on-one, can also be from in a group, whereby it's either focus groups, or you just get students here and they're like, you know what, please tell us, how do you make it? Because also there's always been this thing of me being a multitasker. I'll be in a position of leadership. I'll be playing the sport like campus netball. I'll be working out, going to gym. I'll be working on my craft. That's the Miss Bossy brand. I'll be doing all these other things, on the side that say me, I'm always an active individual. I've always been an active leader. So with me doing all those things, they always come and they're like, these young women, Ms. Bossy, how do you do it? How do you now you are under Golden Key and you are passing with cum laudes, how do you do it? And it boils down to having a balance. Leadership is all about balance. Your life must be balanced. So for me to balance my life that way and people are inspired, it means I'm mentoring without having to do much. It's through my actions. It's through that far-fetched or that distant recognition and motivation and inspiration that I bring out there to young women. So with that said, now I'm concluding. Mentoring is an act of life. Mentoring is being exactly that you are taking out into or bringing to these young women's lives. It's more about action. It's more about living that truth. It's more about servicing. It's more about your image as a leader or as a mentor. Thank you.
Brilliant,
Gabriel?
awesome. I think perhaps we should have made this session maybe 2 or 3 hours, because I think we can go on and on. I want to bring in some few topics before we close off. We've got 15 minutes left. I want to bring in the issue of women in leadership, and I think it's not a conversation we should be having, particularly in the 21st century. And I want to start with you, Christopher, on this. Because I feel we defined authentic leadership earlier on, right? And we threw around the type of characteristics, we threw around some of the key important elements of authentic leadership. And we spoke of competency, being ethical, being accessible, being accountable. And it's said that when we talk about women in leadership, sometimes the conversation about capacity, about competency, only comes around when we speak about women leading. But as we have seen across the African continent, we have a lot of men that lead and lack a lot of competency when you look at some of the lack of development. So what do you think about women in leadership, Christopher? And what's your stance as well on how can we best embrace it?
So to be honest, as you said, this shouldn't be a conversation we're having in the 21st century, but it has to be had for one simple reason, that we need to continue conscientizing the importance of embracing talent for talent. I mean, as you said, you look at the statistics globally speaking of the women that are actually in leadership, and you look at the wonderful things that women have managed to do on this planet. If we take, for example, everyone's dream right now, New Zealand, which dealt with COVID-19 as expeditiously as is humanly possible. It's led by women. And, this is not to say that there's a link between good leadership and women, but, the numbers are showing us, clearly something that we've been missing for a very long time. And I think sometimes you're not supposed to link some of these things together and say that women are better leaders simply because but like the statistics are showing us that, they're doing extremely well. You know what I mean? And I see that it's been stated by Natasha in the comment section that Golden Key SA is an all women's office. And I mean, it just shows like the way that this organization operates is immaculate. It's by far the most organized organization that I've ever served under. So when you look at those things and you look at the issue of women in leadership and the underrepresentation that's there, I don't want to say much, but look at what we're missing. You know what I mean? Like, look at the places that have women in leadership and just look at how well they're doing. And think about why you're resisting that level of excellence in this day and age. It's crazy, because when you serve with a group that is predominantly women, as my committee, the Golden Key Executive at Rhodes it's predominantly women. Women are extremely good at certain things that I'm just like, you know what, I don't think I would have been able to do this. Things like attention to detail. I'll design a poster and then they're like, okay, there's a misalignment over there. And I'm like, what's going on? So now when you look at those things and you look at how leadership has evolved or has stayed stagnant in most cases over the years, we should really think about how women are, extremely capable of doing the things that they've done. And the reason why I think that we shouldn't even belabor this point is because the statistics speak for themselves. But however, what I need to speak about that is a bit of importance is the barriers that women have in terms of reaching those levels. And this is a conversation that has to be had, especially from a male perspective, because we are major culprits when it comes to this. There's always that glass ceiling, a limit to what women have been able to achieve, especially in corporate over time. I would have loved my colleague to stay up to this point because he's had a fair share of corporate. And I think that, it's extremely unfortunate that we as men have, over time been responsible for suppressing the potential that women bear. And this is just something that I would direct to all the males that are part of this conversation. That, first of all, if you ever feel intimidated, right, by a woman's leadership experience or capability to the extent that you suppress her potential using the privilege that you've amassed over centuries, you are basically insecure about, what you're capable of achieving. Because if we say that we're trying to run a merit-oriented system, we're essentially saying that regardless of the person's orientation or differences on any level, that person should be able to get a shot just because they're excellent in that particular thing. So I'd just like to say this to the gents out there, to all the males, that never feel intimidated and never feel inferior simply because you're being led by women. Because this is, as I said, we shouldn't be having this conversation. We are all equals. And in some places, they've shown that they're doing an extremely amazing job. And I'm always super keen whenever I hear that something is being led by women, because the odds of something that is being led by women being successful are usually higher. But yeah, as I close off, I'll say this. I think we just need to start cultivating an environment where excellence takes precedence above everything else. And unless we can establish that one criteria as the guiding criteria in having leaders, being appointed, we are not going to go anywhere, because it's an extreme double standard to, on one hand, say we need to have equality simply because of issues surrounding race, but then when it comes to women in leadership, it then becomes a whole different issue. So all I'm going to say is let excellence be the number one determining feature whenever we're selecting leadership. And secondly, let us make sure that we make good for all the opportunities that women have missed over the years because of the oppression that has been there, formalized and informalized oppression. And thirdly, I'd just like to say that one should never ever feel as if they're inferior simply because they're being led by a specific person. And this goes even beyond women. It goes to race. It goes to every other power dynamic that exists in the society. I think excellence should be the underlying criteria when it comes to determining whether someone's capable of being a leader or not the way that they were born. So yeah, as I said, we shouldn't be having this conversation, but it's something that is necessary. We need to bring awareness to it to ensure that women get a shot in this leadership thing just as much as men do. And yeah, that's my 2 cents on the topic.
Thank you so much, Chris. You mentioned something really well. I wanted to quickly go to Zianda, but I just want to add quickly on something you mentioned. When you spoke about the whole COVID-19 crisis and how New Zealand handled it, and also one of the great women leaders, I think of the 20th or 21st century rather. The German Chancellor, she's stepping down now, and what a remarkable job she did in leading Germany. They've been a huge economic giant in the world, and even we can bring it home, to Golden Key Southern Africa. How remarkable Dr. Elmi Kasselman is leading the GKSA office team with Natasha and Cole, so there's a lot of women that show us, that excellence everywhere, like you indicated, excellence. So yeah, over to you quickly, Zianda.
Thank you. So something very interesting happened when I stepped into office as president. Someone said the Wits Golden Key Committee doesn't have enough male presence. There are too many females. This came from a fellow female. And I realized that in this day and age, we still have such a long way to go. There are some places are making strides to include women, but it feels like a quota. It feels like we're just filling you there to ensure that we have, but it's not enough because it's not representative. Majority of South Africa are women, but in places of in places of leadership, you'll see 3 women and they'll say, oh, but you have 3 women in these major structures. It's not enough. So hence, like I said with the mentoring, tying it to that is that when I mentor young women or ladies, I always say get involved, because there's no better way than getting involved, because you have to work harder, unfortunately. And in this day and age, we're still having this debate. And like Christopher mentioned, is that men shouldn't feel intimidated. We are equal. We're all on this panel, but none of us feel intimidated by the other, because we're all different, bringing in different things. And that's how it should be in places of leadership, that none is inferior, none is superior. We all have different skills, different specializations. And that's why I really enjoyed this workshop, and, highlighting that none of the characteristics and skills that anyone in the panel mentioned had to do with gender, had to do with race, because it shows that whether you are male or female, you can lead if you have certain characteristics, if you have a drive, if you have certain things. So I am very glad to actually have quite a diverse panel and to be led by Natasha, Elmi. There's a lot of women that are leading us, and it's just a great thing. So I want to see more of that. And in my journey as a leader, that's one thing I would love to see: representation and drive and goals being implemented. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zianda. It was lovely having you. I do understand that you do need to leave us now as we close off the session, but thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you for coming on board. Before we close off, colleagues, in about 4 or 5 minutes time, I just want to hear what then. I mean, we've been discussing about leadership. We've been discussing about what it means, the elements, the characteristics, principles. We spoke about everything, things we need to guard against. How do we now go on about capacity development? How do we then go on about capacity development? And I'm going to start with you, Kamvelishe. How do we go on about capacity development so that we ensure that, we spoke about mentoring. Yes, mentoring is important, but what can we do, to develop young leaders, to develop students to become great leaders?
Thank you, my brother. I think I'll draw inspiration from our female leaders of the history. We've got fantastic female leaders on our past, even in our country, even in present times. And I'll look at the likes of Lillian Ngoyi, the likes of Winnie Madikizela Mandela. And one thing that they did, they took initiative, right? So they recognized that we're not happy with the way things are going. We're not happy with the current state of affairs. So we are taking charge, we're taking initiative. So I think we need to adopt that same principle, that we need to take initiative and we need to take charge if we want to see certain things happening, right? So for example, to start off, I think we need to introduce more leadership workshops or leadership training initiatives. Even in schools, there needs to be topics that relate to leadership development. I mean, these things with leadership, one is thrown into leadership from a young age. I mean, from primary school, you have things like who's going to be class representative. You have things like council members in primary school. You go to high school, you've got things like prefects and head leaders. So leadership is very much something that is being thrown into students at a young age. So we need to start these leadership conversations at a young age, at a school level, at a junior level, because I think in some ways we don't necessarily train leaders well enough. We rather wait for them to get into office. And when they're in office, that's where they go through trial and error, and that's where they start learning how to be a leader. It's like an athlete. When an athlete needs to train for a specific race, they have preparation that they have beforehand. And it's the same thing that needs to be applied when it comes to leadership. We need to have leadership training. Even in universities, we need to have more of these leadership workshops, leadership seminars, where we speak and talk about the concept of leadership, what it takes to be a good leader, what are the traits of a leader, what are some of the leadership qualities one needs to have in order to be an effective leader. So these are some of the ways in which I think that we need to be more serious about pushing forward the conversation on leadership. Number one, taking initiative ourselves, because we're not seeing it happening. So we need to make it happen ourselves rather than relying on someone else to do it. Those are the words of Vusi Tembekwayo as well. And secondly, we need to make it a home topic in our homes, in our circles with our friends, in our universities, in our schools. And this is how we will actually end up pushing the notion and pushing the reality of what effective leadership is all about. Thank you, without taking too much time.
Thank you. Thank you, Kambilesh. You mentioned really an important contribution there when you talk about starting it at a very low level, at primary level, we don't really drive the conversation about leadership and what true leadership entails. Christopher, quickly, just in 2 lines, 2 sentences, what you think about what should we do in terms of capacity development?
All right. Look, man, like when it comes to just building capacity, I think we just need to reinvent the way that that we all view leadership, especially in the African context. I think there's been a very much there's been a focus on benefit-oriented leadership where people just get into leadership positions for the title. But I think we also have to emphasize things such as accountability and trying to make sure that people understand what leadership really entails. And as Kambilesh said, I think seminars, leadership, all of that is good, but I think we need to entrench a culture of leadership from a very cultural perspective. I think, as children are raised up, they need to understand that, no, leadership is should be part of what you are as a person. As was mentioned earlier on, leadership is not a title. Leadership is just an accessory to a full-time vocation. It's something that you just need to basically grow up to become, and then whatever title comes is going to be an accessory to something that you already are. So I think we really need to emphasize that point. I think in terms of capacity building, we need to essentially focus more on the content of leadership, reinventing that content of leadership, because we have these seminars, we have leadership structures already in place, we have programs that deal with leadership, but I think we have to reinvent the content. We need to start making the content a bit more relevant to the 21st century. We need to make it relevant, especially to the African context. We've been lagging behind for a very long time. How can we get to the next level as Africa? And we can't use the models that people who are ahead are using, because we need to lead within our context, and we need to reinvent the content of what we're teaching, especially in these leadership seminars, so that we can equip them for a realistic picture of what being a leader in the real world actually entails, especially in an African context. So I think with that said, man, that's all I have to say from my side.
Thank you so much, Chris. Last sentence or two from Boipelo before I hand over to Yonita, just to sum up the leadership summit and seminar for us as a representative from the Golden Key Southern African office. Boipelo, just keep it short in a minute. In a minute, please.
Thank you so much, Obril. You know me, when I talk, all right? And because I always believe speaking is what I do best. But I'm just going to quote you, Anita. I love what she's been sending through on our chat. And she said, as leaders, and especially females, we are called to break the silence on difficult issues in society. And I think that's where I'll conclude, because like I said, leadership is the highest calling. And also, in order for you to be capacitated, as you, Anita, said as well, you must spend more time with leaders, and that's how your capacity will increase. It rubs off. We influence each other, although we don't realize it always. So I believe that, taking it from myself as a female leader that wants to aspire other young females, let's occupy space, as other Yanita is saying, and other speakers have said, let's be there, let's show ourselves. Basically, we must fight for our space in society. We won't be given it on a silver platter, and because that's just how it is, we can't reason it. It's just has been like that predominantly. Let's occupy our spaces, let's lead with character, and let's be the best that is, because we are opening up space for other females that are yet to come. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, amazing. This has been great. Yonita, just gonna hand over to you. But before I do that, I just want to appreciate the panel for saying yes to be part of this. I just want to appreciate Golden Key Southern Africa for allowing us to have this 3-day workshop. I want to say also an amazing big thank you to my colleagues from the Golden Key Mafikeng executive. We managed to put this together, and yeah, thank you so much. Over to you, Yonita.
Thank you, Abril. Thank you to the panel. We are so proud of the Northwest University Mafikeng chapter and all of you attending today, all the panelists. We have learned from your experience. We love to draw from your knowledge. I have to say the last 2 days have been amazing. It has completely set the stage for 2021, and I think there are great things that are going to transpire from these gatherings and these webinars. We are extremely proud of you, and we realize again that life is about leadership. We are either leading or we are being led, and that is good because all of us are human and we always need to develop more. So from the Golden Key Southern Africa head office, thank you for everything. It was fantastic. The recordings will be available on the YouTube channel Golden Key Southern Africa, and we look forward to more events like these. Thank you, Abril.
Thank you. Take care, everyone, and goodbye. Till next time. Cheers.
Yes.
Thank you. May leave the session now. Thank you. Have a lovely week. Bye-bye. Hashtag yes GK. Hashtag GKA. Hashtag lifelong journey. Bye-bye.
Bye, Anita. Bye, others.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.